Mistborn, Book 5, Shadows of Self. Prologue. Waxillium and a 17-year-old Wayne ride up to the saloon in Weathering, pursuing the bounty on Granite Joe. Wax leaves Wayne to tend to Destroyer, Wax's ironically named horse, while Wax enters the bar and he asks the barkeep after Granite Joe, and with a bribe, the barkeep leads Wax into a room near the stairs and asks him to wait. After a short time, Leslie crawls through the window of the room Wax is in, startling both of them. Wax feels there's an air of familiarity around the woman, and she informs him that she is also after the bounty. They agree to work together, and when Wax reveals he had asked the barkeep for help, Leslie mocks him, revealing to Wax that everyone in the saloon belongs to Granite Joe. Confirming her words, Wax sees a group of men assembling outside the room. Hastily, the two decide to exit through the window Leslie had come in from, but a sharpshooter stops them from attempting it. Ultimately, they decide to make a break for it and head up the stairs and find a window on the opposite side of the building from the sharpshooter. Wax provides a barrage of cover fire during their flight up the stairs, managing to miss everything except the piano, to which each bullet manages to strike a different chord. In the new room, Wax remembers Leslie. She was the dancer he had seen at the Weeping Bowl, the very uncoordinated one. Wax whistles for Destroyer, planning for Leslie and him to jump down onto the horse. Wayne, below, tells them she is lazily ignoring him. Another sharpshooter shoots above Wax, but he notices in time. And running out of options, Wax decides to break into the basement he had noticed upon first entering. And so Wax, pulling Leslie down to the ground on top of him, increases his ferrochemical weight, mixed with some fancy allomancy, to force their way through the floor into the basement. They land on top of the table in front of Granite Joe, interrupting his meal, catching his two bodyguards off guard. Wax has his gun pointed toward Granite Joe, but knows he has to deal with the guards, and so, reacting with some fancy allomancy and a couple of lucky shots, Wax incapacitates the two guards. Wax hears a crossbow click behind him, revealing Leslie pointing it at him. She tells how she did warn him that everyone in the saloon was under Granite Joe. Wax tells her how he still thinks her legs are pretty. Leslie sighs, turns, and shoots Granite Joe in the neck, critiquing Wax on that being the best he had to win her over. The bandits begin to flood in from the staircase, and Wax, hearing them, strikes a dramatic pose over the bodies, and the bandits flee at the sight. Leslie and Wax flirtatiously banter, and he thanks her for not killing him. Destroyer finally shows up, and Wax lifts Leslie and himself out of the wreckage. Part 1, Chapter 1. 17 years later, Winston Innate, an emotional allomancer and brother to the governor, Repler Innate, is holding an auction for his vote in the Senate under the guise of his crudely made painting being the object of bidding for it. Winston's attendees in the ballroom consist of an assortment of crime lords and corrupt nobles. Winston is disappointed that Edward Ladrian is not among those gathered. Dowser Melini, a potential high bidder accompanied by a tall woman, approaches Winston. After the conversation, Winston identifies the woman as a potential spy, possibly for the constabulary, and so orders his servant, Flog, to tail and kill her if she splits from Dowser. Sometime later, the mingling is interrupted by a gunshot, followed by many more. In the chaos, Flog tows Winston into the safe room. Confused as to what exactly had happened, Flog goes up to investigate. Flog returns, saying how they are all dead. Winston realizes how bad all of this will look, seeing as he owns the building and it will all be traced back to him. Winston's worries are cut short by a pair of hands from behind, yanking his head back and slitting his throat. Chapter 2. Back at the Ladrian Manor, Steris is wedding planning and asks after Wax's enemies, trying to figure out which ones to invite in order to prepare for their wedding to be disrupted by them. Wax is busy reading the Lord Mistborn's notes on hymnurgy from the book that Marsh had given to him. He is surprised by Steris' question and amused when she reveals that she has taken extensive notes on his enemies and their various threat levels, trying to suss out possible scenarios. Wayne barges in, ignoring Darius, the butler, who he doesn't trust, and tells Wax that the marksman, a coin shot they have been pursuing thanks to Edwarn's notebook connecting him to the set, has made his move and that they need to go. Hurriedly, Wax awkwardly says goodbye to Steris, feeling there should have been something more between them during the exchange. On his leaving, Steris reminds him of their wedding portraits that they need to sit for in the evening and to try not to get shot in the face. Also to look after her sister, who undoubtedly will follow the danger. He agrees, taking a shot of whiskey and metal flakes on his way out. They depart via motorcar, and Wax is surprised and annoyed to find Mercy behind the wheel, just as Steris had said. She, being an analyst and assistant, shouldn't even be in the field, yet here she was. Wax berates Mercy for being there and not in a courtroom where she belongs. Mercy counters by saying how grumpy he is and wondering what life decision he may be regretting, in reference to his upcoming marriage to her sister. They begin following the marksman who has just robbed a bank and is using steel pushes to fly through the streets of Ellendale. Wax leaves the vehicle, choosing to take to the skies in an allomantic chase. The marksman leads Wax upward into an office building where the two banter. The marksman claims he is a hero to the people in stealing from the wealthy, and there is some truth to it, but Wax counters, saying how he lost that title the moment he killed that little girl, accident or not. Wax baits the marksman and is able to use a haze killer round combined with a steel push to wound him. Their chase continues and ends in the slums, where Wax gets distracted and loses him after seeing who he believes was Bloody Tan, the man who had held Leslie hostage right before Wax had mistakenly shot her. Wayne and Mercy catch up to him, and the three try to find the marksman, knowing that he is bleeding and leaking banknotes. Chapter 3. Wayne leaves his hat where it's safe and, choosing to work alone, tracks down a local beggar. Wayne is able to trade some whiskey for the man's clothes while mimicking his accent in order to learn it. He uses his new disguise to seek out information on the marksman, of whom the poor people of the slums are loyal to, but Wayne is able to trick and tail one of the locals right to the marksman. And by use of a perfectly placed speed bubble, Wayne manages to incapacitate Marks and leave with the unconscious man undetected. Wayne returns in time to watch Wax and Mercy fail at questioning the locals themselves while eating the rotten apples he was given. Mercy feels that Wax still thinks she is infatuated with him, when in reality she is just bitter about how things turned out. Mercy thinks that Wax, now being stuck in civilization, is making him act more of the rough deputy he used to be. Wayne reveals his bounty to them, and Mercy is astounded that Wayne managed to capture Marks. Sensing danger, Wax and Wayne react to an incoming crossbow bolt and get Mercy to safety. The bolt takes Marks in the skull. Wax and Wayne leave to pursue the sniper, and Mercy examines the body, realizing that if she were the sniper, she would double back and make sure her target is dead. And just as the thought occurs to her, the man with the crossbow appears. He reacts to Mercy by taking her hostage with a glass blade to her throat. Wax returns, but before he can do anything, Mercy, ignoring her training, instead reacts instinctively and takes out a hidden pistol from her handbag and blows the bottom half of the assassin's head up out of the top half. Chapter 4. Mercy's shot had taken out a large chunk of the assassin's head, making identifying him difficult. Mercy drops her gun, exclaiming to the others that what she did was unexpected. Wax assures her she did the right thing, to no avail though, because the gunshot had left a ringing in her ears, making hearing impossible. Reddy appears, and Wax has him secure the area as they look for clues. Reddy informs Wax that he had already been looking for him to investigate the incident with the governor's brother the night before. So Wax and Wayne take a carriage to the crime scene, leaving Mercy frustrated that once again, Wax wasn't treating her as an equal, instead leaving her behind. Reddy berates Mercy for being there on her day off and questions how she always winds up in the field despite not being a field agent. He then tells her to go home, loudly because she still can't hear properly. She argues, saying that she will report directly to Aradel on the events of tonight and have him dismiss her. and so she leaves following Wax and Wayne via her motor car given to her by Aradel in order to test out their practicality. They all arrive at the fashionable mansion and see the massacre in the ballroom. Claude Aradel is picking through the scene when they arrive. Aradel came out of retirement to take Breton's position of Constable General after Breton retired shortly after the execution of Miles' 100 Lives. Mercy proposes this was the work of an outsider, someone who could gain from the underworld crumbling. Wax agrees with her theory, but adds to it by saying how the people in the room shot at each other from the middle. After investigating Winsting's death, Wax comes to the conclusion that they are dealing with a ferrochemist, a steel runner, and that Winsting and the guards knew the murderer and trusted them enough to let them into the safe room where they had killed Winsting and then the guards on their way out. This unfortunate event involved too many people not to make it out to the public. Wax informs them that he must leave to sit for his wedding portraits. Before departing though, he tells the captain to prepare for a storm, for whoever did this will strike again. Part 2, Chapter 5. Wayne prepares to leave Wax's mansion where he has been staying. Before doing so, Wayne discusses the crime scene with Wax and leads him to the conclusion that the killer used their ability to bounce around the room, firing from different locations in order to sow chaos and make the guests shoot one another. Wax asks Wayne to go to the Terrace village and find out who this steel runner might be. Wayne informs Wax that it's the first of the month and so he cannot. Wax, with reluctance, decides to go himself. Mercy buys a newspaper and discovers that Winsting's death and the criminal implications surrounding it had indeed gotten out. Mercy thinks on how the people who are already in turmoil over a loss of jobs and labor disputes will react if they begin to think their own governor is corrupt. It likely would lead to a revolt. Wax exits the carriage and enters the Terrace village, safely hidden away in a forested area away from the rest of society. The smell of it reminds him of his mother. The Terrace are self-policing and don't want to grant Wax entry, him being an offshoot part of the constabulary, but his grandmother Voffendal intervenes. Wayne exits the canal boat and finishes off the rum he had traded for back at Wax's mansion, fully in the feels of inebriation. Wayne stands in front of Ellendale University preparing for his 3 tests, dismayed at finding his previous points of entry gone. So he leaves in order to find a way to cheat his way in, and stumbles upon his buddy and gang leader Dims. Wayne bribes Dims, who in return causes a distraction that leads the guards away as the now disguised Wayne strolls right through the front gates. Wayne heads for the girls' dormitory and faces the second trial in the form of the clerk, a bulky woman. She can tell he's drunk and knowing why he's there tells him he can't see the girl. Wayne bribes her with an invitation to Lady Zobel's party. He had traded a leaf for it back at the mansion. It was meant for Wax and Steris, but there was no actual name listed on the invitation. The clerk accepts and sends for the girl. As Alriandra arrives with her posse of friends, all of whom look under 20, Wayne prepares for his third and final test. At her accusation, he clears up his drunken state and offers an envelope containing this month's money. As expected, before accepting the money, Alriandra pulls out a locket and shows Wayne a picture of her father. And so Wayne, almost ritually, recites how he had killed her daddy, shot him for his pocketbook, shot a better man than he, and because of this, doesn't deserve to be alive. Alriandra stares at him with empty eyes and tells Wayne that he is not forgiven, that he will never be forgiven. Wayne accepts this verdict, and so Alriandra accepts his blood money. Wax enters his grandmother's hut, who addresses him as Asinthu, his Terrace name, and chastises him for bringing his guns. Wax is annoyed by his grandmother's beliefs and says as much. Wax's grandmother takes it in stride, but criticizes him for clinging to an image of her from 2 decades ago, from his childhood. The 1 year he had spent living among them, which was all his father had agreed to, along with his uncle Edwarn, who had basically appropriated his brother's children and had wanted Wax and Telson to stay away entirely, at least until Edwarn's own child, Hinston, was born when Wax was 18. Voffendal tries to correct Wax, claiming that she doesn't hate his allomancy, just the implications of him being twin-born, fearing another Lord Ruler. Wax reminisces on his childhood and how he had felt torn between two worlds. Wax asks her about any steel runners in the city. Boffendal says he is looking for Adashwi, who had vanished about 1 month ago after claiming she was being visited by the spirit of her dead brother. Wax remembers her. She was there all that time ago when he had been forced to kill as a kid. Wax remembers the bullet he had used, and that memory fills him with purpose now, for it had set him on his path to becoming a lawman. His grandmother requests he try and bring Adashwi back alive, disliking how quick Wax is to kill. Wax pushes off a coin and leaves the village and his past behind once more. Mercy gets a sense of excitement being in the precinct offices, bucking the expectations set upon her. She passes by her desk containing her mother's kindly worded angry letters. Her mother seeks validation through her and disapproves that the Lord Harms's generous stipend used to send Mercy through university was now set aside to pursue what she wanted, a path that Waxillium had set her on. Mercy attempts to ignore Reddy's obvious dislike for her and reports to Aradel, who informs her that Reddy treats her that way because she unknowingly took his job, when Aradel chose her over him for the assistant position. Rather it be used for someone new who had drive than wasted on a good field officer. Mercy is surprised by this, and Aradel orders her to attend Inate's upcoming public speech and report back to him on what is said. Chapter 6. Wax soars over Elendel, thinking on how, due to his house and his seat on the Senate, he is responsible for tens of thousands. Wax helps some constables scare off a group of protesters and finds Wayne brooding on a dock with his feet in the water. Wax cheers Wayne out of his stupor by telling him how if he had found him in the act of armed robbery, he would have shot Wayne. It was sheer luck that had saved Wayne's life. Wax and his mentor, John Deadfinger, had found a 16-year-old Wayne curled up in a crawl space under a house, haunted at the sound of a gunshot that had killed Alriandra's father. Wayne had thrown his gun down a well, forbidding himself of them ever since. Wax asks Wayne after Adashwi, who claims to know her from the times he would dress up as a terraceman and live among them for fun. Mercy sees a customer outraged by the price of apples and also notices low quantities of food among the other carts. She investigates and discovers there is a grain shortage due to flooding. Mercy makes her way along the promenade and meets up with other constables, keeping order in preparation of the governor's speech. Mercy, thanks to the captain recognizing her as the bastard child of Lord Harms, tells her of a good spot to listen to the speech near the reporters. Mercy is annoyed that since she hangs around Wax, the nature of her birth is freely passed around through gossip, but heads to the spot anyway. Wax, while questioning some beggars along Tyndall Promenade, swears he catches another glimpse of Bloody Tan and pushes himself up to try and find him. Wax notices the crowd looks dangerous because of the labor issues, with half the people overworked and underpaid and the other half out of work altogether. Wayne approaches Wax and, based on his expression, assumes he must be thinking of his impending marriage to Steris, to which Wax tells him to leave Steris alone. Wayne tells Wax that their steel runner had a bookkeeping job for a jeweler down the road that she hasn't shown up for in a week. Thanks to the jeweler, Wax and Wayne head to Adashwi's address and find her dead inside, a large hole bore in her chest. Wayne notices that the place is too clean and deduces that Adashwi left the village in yearning to discover her lost youth. Wax has Wayne take a look at the pocketbook Iron Eyes had given him. Wax explains to Wayne how this hemorrhagy can be used to steal other people's allomantic and ferrochemical abilities via a spike, insinuating that's what happened to Adashwi, proven by the large hole bore in her chest. Lestaborne's Spook had written about hemorrhagy in the pocketbook, annoyed that Harmony's version in the Words of Founding had omitted it. Iron Eyes, Marsh, had known that this day would come and had given the book to Wax. Wax realizes that whoever they are looking for could have any number of powers. Wayne rummages through the dead woman's pockets and finds a note for Wax. The note has the same phrase scrawled on it that Bloody Tan had said just before yanking Lessie into the path of the bullet. "Someone else moves us, lawman." Mercy also notices the crowd's hostility and wonders if the governor knows how to quell them. Once the speech begins, Mercy feels the governor is misreading the people and talks only of his brother and how he is innocent. It becomes clear Innate is only interested in preserving his family's name and states that a full investigation on the constables will take place, claiming his brother's death was the result of a bungled raid in which his brother was the bait, and that the constables are covering it up. Innate then claims that aid will be sent out east to those affected by the flooding. Mercy assumes that this aid being sent out of the city will further anger the people. Mercy begins to become annoyed at a guardsman blocking her view. She then sees him suddenly pull out a revolver and level it at the governor while whispering to himself. Mercy's cries of alarm are drowned out in the roar of the crowd. Mercy, dismayed, desperately jumps at the man and throws up her cadmium bubble while grabbing for his ankles. The man is able to fire a shot, but thanks to the bubble, it goes wild. Clutching his ankles is not enough to topple the man though, but luckily the other guards within the bubble are able to assist in incapacitating him. Mercy drops the bubble and the governor is safely rushed away. Chapter 7. Back at the Ladrian Manor, Wax and Wayne dispute Bloody Tan. Darius informs Wax that Renette had left him some new equipment to test, and mentions how Lady Harms awaits him in the study. Wax asks Darius to send a letter to his grandma telling her of the unfortunate death of Adashwi. In the study, Steris reminds Wax of their attendance of Lady Zobel's party, even though their invitation had mysteriously gone missing, courtesy of Wayne. Steris coerces Wax into wanting to go by saying the governor will be there, as well as informing Wax of the recent assassination attempt. Wax leaves, assuring Steris that he will try to make the party, but now must question the person who attempted the assassination. On the way, in the carriage driven by their new coachman Hoyd, Wax pulls out his Pathian earring. He had been avoiding it, knowing now that it was a hemorrhagic spike. Wax slips it in, and Harmony answers him, confirming his suspicion. The voice, despite expecting it, startles him. The other times he had heard it, he was half delusional. So, to help Wax come to terms with it, Harmony says outright that he is Sazed, the hero of ages, becoming Harmony after taking up both the powers of preservation and ruin. Wax makes a sarcastic comment to Harmony, who is pleased that Wax treats him less like a god, reminding him of older times, something he hasn't felt since Kelsier. Harmony then begins to explain to Wax what Kandra are, and that the one doing the crimes is one of these faceless immortals. Pa'am, a female Kandra of the third generation calling herself Bleeder. Normally Sazed would intervene, but is unable to take control of Palm, for 2 spikes are needed, and Palm has removed one of her 2 blessings, spikes, which are also needed for cognition, leaving Bleeder effectively insane. She is wrong beyond just that though, for she has also found a way to hide from Harmony, making him unable to track her. Harmony does not like that Spook wrote of hemorrhagy in his book, but trusts Marsh in giving it to Wax. Harmony explains that Kandra shouldn't even have access to any abilities through hemorrhagy. Somehow Bleeder has found a way though, but can only use 1 spike at a time, or else she will open herself up to Harmony's control. To swap abilities, Bleeder must be ripping out 1 spike and falling onto another in order to digest it and regain sapience. Harmony admits he does not know Bleeder's plan, but requests Wax look into it, for Harmony's own hands are tied. The 2 shards residing within him, ruin and preservation, have opposing intents, making Sazed see the need for both life and death. While Sazed does not like what Bleeder is doing, she was of preservation and now is of ruin. And while not agreeing with murder, the potential for murderers is necessary. Wax cannot accept Harmony's inaction, and Harmony agrees with Wax's perspective, but his essence, his own very being, cannot allow him to take sides. Harmony fears he has already made life too easy for the people of the basin, giving them fertile ground in an ideal climate, making them stagnant, their progression slow. Harmony says how in giving them everything, he has killed their drive to push and explore, while others, who were nearly destroyed, have. Harmony trails off after this, but the implications are clear, hinting at Southern Scadrial. Harmony begs Wax to do what he cannot and tells him to be less harsh towards Mercy, who he has maneuvered into a position to do good in the city, and that it pains him that Wax dismisses her, afraid of her admiration making him feel uncomfortable. Harmony ends the conversation saying how he will send help, and Wayne re-enters asking if Wax is done talking to himself. Their carriage reaches the precinct. Mercy's hands tremble from a form of PTSD. She gets them under control and berates Reddy and the other officers for wanting to torture Ryan, the governor's would-be assassin, for information, informing them that doing so is illegal and can be used against them in court. Wax enters, instantly informing them that they have been duped and that Ryan is a decoy, knowing so having pushed on Ryan's bracers, which he can tell aren't metal mines. Wax agrees to interrogate Ryan anyway and asks Mercy to assist him, which surprises her. Wax compliments Mercy and fills her in briefly on his conversation with Harmony, and the killer being a faceless immortal. Ryan claims that God, Bleeder, spoke to him wanting him to kill the governor, and says how there's something for Wax in his arm. At Mercy's disapproval, Wax takes a knife and removes a coin from Ryan's arm. Wax knows the coin and is taken aback by it. Wax declares to Mercy that they have to go to the governor's party after all, for Bleeder will be there. Chapter 8. On their way to the party via carriage, Wax tells Steris a story from when he was a boy. Wax, age 12, was riding in his uncle's carriage. Edwarn was having Wax detect the defect between two nearly identical coins. Wax tells his uncle he can see the difference, to which Edwarn is doubtful, claiming how Wax must have been told, although Edwarn respects Wax for not wanting to reveal his supposed source to him. Edwarn explains how the coin is worth a ton of money simply for being rare, and uses this instance as a teaching moment for the young Waxilium Ladrian, informing him how money is meaningless and only expectation has value as a currency. Wax, to his uncle's distaste, tells him how he wants to be a hero like in the stories of old, not a banker. Edwarn, reciting Wax's age, comments on how these fanciful notions should have been beaten out of him by his father by now. They arrive at the bank and Edwarn has Wax observe two potential loan customers from a viewing room, a rich man and a poor man, and asks Wax which one they will give a loan to. Wax guesses the rich man, and Edwarn counters, saying how it will be both, because the rich man is a safe investment that will make the bank 3% interest, but the poor man is where they will really make the money. For they can charge him 12% interest, and the debt will cripple him into being a slave to the bank, unable to ever get the loan paid off. Wax, horrified at this cruel tactic, bursts into the poor man's meeting room, attempting to save him by giving him the rare misprinted coin to sell to no avail. Steris asks Wax what happened, to which Wax says the poor man ended up killing himself 8 years later, and his sons are still indebted to whoever owns the loans now. Wax flips over the coin that Bleeder gave him, the same misprinted coin from his story, and reads the crude etching on the back, asking, "Why did you leave, Wax?" Steris questions Wax on what it means and comments on how Wax seems fully awake now, calling him a predator similar to a lion, for he is hunting, and she asks what he is hunting for. Wax replies that he is hunting Bleeder and that she wants him here tonight to test him. Steris makes note of how personal this all seems, and their carriage is halted by an onslaught of traffic. So Steris, having planned for this incident, pulls out her schedule and tells Wax that this is the part where he inappropriately, but at the same time breathtaking, flies them both to the top in order to save time. And so he does, utilizing this opportunity to test out Renette's grappling spike she had gifted him. Steris exclaims how much she enjoys it despite desperately clinging onto him the whole time. Their dramatic arrival does not go unnoticed, but it seems fitting nonetheless, and Wax, grabbing Steris' arm in a much more familiar way than she had instructed, enter Lady Zobel's party. Chapter 9. Wayne stands at the foot of Zobel Tower watching Wax and Steris disappear into the mists above, and curses Wax for taking Steris instead of him. Wayne incorrectly believes that Wax has no emotional attachment with Steris and is only with her because he misses Lessie. Wayne helps Mercy out of the carriage, and Wayne is reminded of Mercy's surprise when she saw him in such a nice outfit. Wayne asks after the man she had captured, the one who had tried to shoot the governor, and she tells of how there was a hemalurgic spike in him. Mercy and Wayne are denied entry to the party despite having an invitation, and Wayne throws up a speed bubble and sees that their names are both on the do not allow entry list. So Wayne picks out a name on the allow entry list to impersonate, a mathematician by the name of Professor Hanlanese, who rarely attends any parties and is from out of town, indicating to Wayne that people won't recognize him, making him the perfect candidate. Wax is drawing attention from the people around him thanks to his insistence on wearing his mist coat and guns. Steris tells Wax she wants to help him in finding Bleeder, it being much more important than socializing for political reasons. They pass by an empty pedestal with a plaque reading, "The Lost Metal, Atium." Wax is approached by a tall woman with ashen hair and a red dress missing most of its top half. The woman introduces herself as Milan, and talks to Wax very bluntly despite Steris being right next to him. She leaves, and Wax and Steris are finally able to talk to the governor, who mentions the Lady Innate being unwell. Wax warns the governor of the danger he believes he is still in, despite the assailant who had shot at him being in custody. Wax tells the governor he wishes to meet with him, and the governor gives Wax his word that tomorrow they will. Wax's thoughts are then interrupted by Bleeder, who whispers in his head that Wax is an actor on a stage, all part of Harmony's plan. Wax assumes Bleeder has found a way to communicate with him through his earring acting as a hemalurgic spike. Chapter 10. Wayne, disguised as the professor with Mercy playing his assistant, are strolling through the party. Wayne, mostly concerned with getting his hands on more of the little sausages, is suddenly slapped by a 15-year-old girl. She yells at him, calling him a monster, claiming he had stolen her father's invention, leaving him destitute. The girl states how she will have her revenge, and the situation momentarily kicks Wayne out of character, and he begins dwelling on his own situation with Alejandro's father, who he had really killed. This encounter saddens him, but he is able to remind himself he is playing a character. Mercy recognizes the girl as Sophie Tarxell. Wax quickly excuses himself to try to find Bleeder, who must be close, assuming she is using Tin to listen for his responses, already having identified that she can't read his thoughts. He thinks on what this means and how entering someone's mind must be a power of ruin, and that reading someone's mind is of preservation. Bleeder continues to taunt Wax as he circles the room, claiming how he dances for Harmony, who is a poor excuse for a god. She admits to the governor being corrupt and that he must be killed eventually, but not before she kills Wax's father, which confuses Wax since his father is dead. Wax notices only two people tracking him, being Milan and a male server. He turns on the server, who runs. Wax pursues, unholstering Vindication, and Wayne, seeing what is happening, tackles the server. The server is able to escape after the guards dogpile on as well. Wax hears Bleeder whisper to him how she was sad his lover had to die. Lessie enters his mind, and he momentarily freezes, but Wax shoots anyway. The server, unperturbed, jumps through a window 20 floors up, and Wax chases after him, throwing himself into the mist. Chapter 11. Falling through the mists feels right, and reminds Wax of Vin, the Ascendant Warrior said to watch over those in the night. Wax fires Vindication into the ground, pushing on his bullets to slow his descent, and pursues a vehicle he suspects is Bleeder. Wax halts the vehicle by pushing down on the engine block, and the driver informs Wax that Bleeder jumped out 2 streets back, ordering him to keep driving. Wax, aware that the driver could actually be Bleeder, trusts his instincts and leaves to search for her. He is ambushed by a group of men having walked into a trap, and takes a bullet in the arm, luckily missing anything vital. The men suppress Wax with a barrage of aluminum bullets, and Wax predicts a flanking maneuver correctly and is assisted in killing the men by Milan, the woman in red who had flirted with him. She notices that he is injured and suggests that they run for it. Wax pulls her close, planning to take to the air, but Milan warns him that they have 5 snipers posted waiting for him to do just that. So he follows her original suggestion, making a run for it. They become surrounded again, and Milan reveals that she doesn't think these men work for Bleeder. There are too many of them, and Bleeder works alone. Knowing that they must fight, Milan reaches into her well-formed and mostly exposed chest as it begins to turn transparent, removing a handgun from one of her breasts as it splits apart, saying how convenient these things are for storage. Wax realizes she is a faceless immortal, and Harmony tells Wax that he can trust her, for he had sent her. Milan asks Wax not to tell TenSoon about all the murdering she is doing, as technically she isn't supposed to kill people. Wax uses his guns to effectively eliminate their adversaries, but is forced to switch to Renette's tethered spike after running out of ammo. Luckily, it's also quite effective. Milan finishes off the last man, who shouts out that the set sends its regards. Wax, based on what Bleeder said to him back at the party, informs Milan that he believes Bleeder is planning to kill Lord Harms, Steris' father, his father-in-law. And so they split up, agreeing to meet at a tavern called the Counselor's Cup afterwards. Wax uses a fallen corpse to fling into the air, drawing the sniper's attention, confirming that they are still there. He dives into the canal and uses steel pushes to safely avoid them, taking to the sky only once he's sure it's safe to save Lord Harms. Chapter 12. Wayne is interrogating the staff at the Zobel party. He determines that the server Wax chased after could not have been Bleeder. It just didn't make sense that she would want to impersonate him, as he is new and has a bad reputation for being a klutz. Wayne believes the server was some other type of mole. Annoyed, Wayne notices that Innate, the man he is supposed to be protecting, is missing, and his guards say that the governor was sent off to a safe location a while ago. Wayne argues with the guard, eventually decking him in the face. Wax bursts through the window of Harms' estate, startling the man. Upon seeing Wax, Lord Harms wastes no time and scrambles to reach in his desk drawer, withdrawing a pistol, asking Wax where the bad guys are and that together they could take them. Wax smartly moves the barrel of Lord Harms' pistol away from him and tells the Lord of the danger he is in and how he needs to be moved. First, testing Lord Harms with a question only he would know, ensuring Bleeder wasn't already impersonating him. Satisfied, Wax decides to randomly stash Harms atop Fetter Tower, feeling that it's hard to outthink a plan with no thought involved, even for a 300-year-old immortal. Wax leaves after assuring Lord Harms that his daughter Steris will be safe, noticing the lack of the Lord's mention of his other daughter, Mercy. Wax, through logical deduction, is able to find the governor's carriage, thankful that it wasn't overly easy, indicating that the guards were at least doing their job. Wax lands atop the moving carriage and is allowed entry by Drim, the leader of Innate's guards. Wax informs Innate of the danger to him and tells him the truth of Bleeder being a faceless immortal gone insane. Innate is dubious, and Wax has to threaten to leave multiple times before Innate agrees to take Wax seriously and allow Wax to look over his security. The governor refuses to leave the city, but agrees to go to his safe house and meet with Milan to help prove that a faceless immortal is actually after him. Wax has both men exchange passphrases with him. Alerted by a cry of alarm from outside Innate's mansion, Wax withdraws Vindication. A servant appears informing the governor that Father Ben has been murdered, and Wax begins to realize what Bleeder meant by his father. Steris leaves Zobel Tower and sees Wayne eating a sandwich across the street from a bunch of Innate's wounded guards. Steris asks Wayne if this is what marriage to Wax will be like, constantly being left behind and only half part of his life. In response, Wayne makes a particularly nasty comment toward her. Steris notes how Wayne is blatantly rude to her, unlike other people. He admits he finds her repulsive and walks over to sit with the guards he had just beaten up, making the message abundantly clear that he'd rather be sitting with them than with her. Mercy shows up in a constable carriage and has Steris get in, telling her the danger has only just started, calling for Wayne to join them as well. Mercy stares up at Father Ben's corpse, nailed to the wall, 2 spikes, one protruding from each eye. Aradel comes up beside her, informing her that Steris has been set up in one of their best safe houses. To Reddy's dismay, Aradel has Mercy head the interrogations. The various people all point toward a Pathian priest coming in with blood on his hands, spewing a blasphemous sermon before revealing the body of Father Ben to them, who is a survivorist priest. Mercy, having already caught Aradel up on what Wax had told her of the Kandra Bleeder, tells Aradel that this must be Bleeder's doing, sowing even more chaos by undermining the Pathian religion. Aradel has his doubts, but agrees with Mercy's reasoning that the unrest in the city could be linked to the murders, especially after Mercy points out how it all hit a boiling point after the increase in food prices resulting from a dam breaking that flooded the lands. Mercy suggests that this could have been sabotage, and Aradel agrees to look into it. Mercy, paranoid, wonders if Aradel could be Bleeder, but dismisses the thought. Wax enters and inspects the body, noting how the spikes aren't him allergic. He then exits the building looking for Bleeder's escape route and notices some paint scrapings on some bricks. Wax and Mercy agree that they need more info on Bleeder, and since God is not available, Wax asks Mercy to come with him to meet the next best thing, Milan. Chapter 13. Wayne, on Wax's orders, enters the Counselor's Cup, calling it a temple of the common man, with the deity being Breeze, whose picture hangs in there, cup in hand. The worship ritual consists of people drinking and confessing complaints to one another. Wayne notices how foul a mood everyone is in and takes it upon himself to turn everyone's boring alcoholic drinks into mixed drinks, ending with Milan's, who he realizes is the faceless immortal after seeing her skin and eyes shift. Milan gives Wayne the passcode Wax had her make up, and she compliments Wayne's ability to cheer everyone up, also requesting another mixed drink. The two hit it off a bit too well, and Wax and Mercy arrive to see them competing in a belching contest, with Milan thoroughly impressed at Wayne's talents. Mercy is horrified at the sight, and Wax is surprised how unusual Milan is for being a 600-year-old immortal. Milan asks that they not treat her like a deity, and Wax comments on how he remembers her giving him his earring, that she was wearing the same body. Milan confesses that she prefers true bodies, and they begin to talk of Palm, Bleeder. Milan says how Palm is one of the best impersonators, second only to Tin Soon, and that imitation is ingrained into the older Kandras. Milan says how Palm is virtually a blank slate, having no real personality of her own, constantly preferring to impersonate others. She tells of how Palm was the personal servant of the Lord Ruler himself, and that he likely had her act as a mole within his own Inquisitor ranks. This is likely how she is able to use and is so familiar with Hemorrhagy, Feruchemy, and Allomancy. Wax asks how he is to kill and identify Bleeder. Milan gives him 2 syringes that, when injected, will reveal a person to be a Kandra, as well as briefly incapacitating them. Unfortunately, if it is injected into a regular person, it will kill them instantly. Milan expresses her wishes to not kill Bleeder and instead remove her spike, reverting her back to her primal state as a mist wraith. That way they can diagnose and save her, seeing as the entire Kandra race consists of only 300. Wax does not agree that Bleeder should be saved, but agrees to try. Wax wishes to know what made Bleeder snap, and her motives, believing it will help him to understand her. They agree to split up, with Mercy and Milan going to the precinct to take care of an errand, and Wax orders Wayne to protect the governor. Chapter 14. A loud church bell tower rings 11, and Wax notices with the unemployment rising, the streets are busier than they should be. Following the commotion, he arrives at a sanctuary where a group of people are harassing a Pathian missionary. Wax unholsters Vindication, causing the mob to scatter. Wax asks if she, the missionary, is alright and tells her to gather her colleagues and head to the village for her own safety. He explains the situation to her, that someone posing as a Pathian missionary had killed a survivorist priest. Hoping she heeds his warning, Wax leaves, using allomantic lines as a guide to track down where one of the men he had scared off had hidden. Wax finds the man in an alley, soiling himself at the sight of Wax wielding vindication. Wax strongly urges the man leave the missionary alone. Surprising Wax, the frightened man reveals that he wasn't there because of the murder, but instead because two people dressed in Pathian robes had stirred up trouble in a pub, cursing the survivor. This leads Wax to believe Bleeder isn't working alone, and that there is more to this plot than the one killing. Instinctively, Wax senses his uncle's hand in this somehow. Wax arrives at his intended original destination of Ashweather Carriage and Coach, suspecting that the paint scrapings he had found outside the crime scene likely came from a hired carriage. Wax questions the owner, Set, and finds it suspicious just how eager he is to cooperate. Ultimately, Wax discovers that Bleeder likely hired Coach 16, who is still out. He also inadvertently uncovers the crime Set had been nervous of when his coin-shot employee returns to give a report on the drivers, and lets slip that they also employ a rioter to influence customers and increase business. A serious crime, but not one Wax was too worried about right now. Mercy and Milan arrive at the bustling precinct where an influx of constabulary officers were being called in and armed to deal with the civil unrest. Mercy notices how Milan's purposely crafted 6-foot-tall voluptuous female body, which exaggerated her curves to inhuman proportions, was attracting a lot of looks and stares from the men, and how Milan was enjoying the attention. They discuss religion, and Milan, misunderstanding the survivorist religion, admits that she hadn't actually read Harmony's words of founding, despite being over 600 years old. This baffles Mercy. They enter the records office, and Mercy is instantly reminded that it was unfortunately run by Micklin, one of Reddy's closest friends. Micklin admits that he was sent to dig up files on the dam breaking, and at Mercy's prodding reveals that he had found nothing, but lets Mercy see for herself, not before giving her a hard time though. Mercy retreats, and looking over the file finds that a farmer saboteur caused the flood, wanting to ruin his neighbor's farm but accidentally used too much dynamite, resulting in a disastrous flood which killed dozens, destroyed crops, and caused the grain shortages. The part of note was that at the trial, before being sentenced to death, the man was acting erratic and couldn't even recall the names of his own children. There was also a report that 2 nights later his grave was desecrated. All of this pointed toward Bleeder impersonating him, except it was a bit uncharacteristic that Bleeder, being so professional, wouldn't have known the farmer's children's names. Chapter 15. Wax arrives at a soothing parlor. The black coach with the scraped silver crest was parked nearby. Wax enters the building, instantly regretting not bringing his aluminum-lined hat to ward off against the effects of emotional allomancy. The proprietor, at Wax's request, leads him to Chappelle, the driver of the scraped coach. Wax kneels beside the haunted Chappelle and finds out he came here to try and forget what he saw, and what he saw had been himself. Mercy finds Ardell on the roof getting a report from some coin-shot contractors. She is able to overhear them telling Ardell that thousands of people are still congesting the streets and pubs, refusing to go home. In response, Ardell plans to ask the governor to declare martial law and close down the pubs. Ardell asks Mercy what she has for him, and she gets him up to speed on Bleeder, most likely being behind the dam breaking and helping push the city toward its breaking point. Ardell still asks her for proof of Bleeder being a faceless immortal, and so Mercy introduces him to one, Milan. And so Milan, in private, allows her skin to become transparent, showing him physical proof of her abilities. She then answers his questions regarding Palm. Ardell, overwhelmed, bows to Milan and leaves to speak with Mercy, asking her to keep an eye on Waxilium Ladrian, essentially spying on him for Ardell. Mercy agrees to keep Ardell in the loop on what Wax is doing, but that she will tell Wax she is doing so. Aradel tells her to go to the governor and request an executive order of martial law to close down the pubs, and then to Wax to see what kind of headway he has made on Bleeder. Mercy questions whether the only reason she got the assistant job was so Aradel could have access to Wax. Shaking herself out of that line of thinking, she and Milan leave to see the governor. Wax listened to Chappau's reciting of the night's events while he rummages through the coach looking for clues. Chappau admits to peeking through the slot in the coach, discovering to his horror he had been carrying not a man, but a monster, a Mistwraith, which upon being spied on transformed into a twisted version of himself before his very eyes. Wax listens and inside the coach finds bones of the priest Bleeder had imitated, the bloody mallet used to drive the spikes into Father Ben, along with the Pathian robes which had an odd glowing residue on the hem, which he takes a sample of. Wax discovers that the driver dropped the creature off at Lestib Square near the governor's mansion, and so, preparing to leave, Wax gives the coachman some money and tells him not to worry about it further. Chapter 16. Wax, perched on an electricity pylon overlooking the governor's mansion, thinks of the ever-growing angry crowds of people swarming in the streets, and of his hunt for Bleeder, who just then interrupts his thoughts, speaking in his head once more. Instinctively, Wax reaches for vindication and begins searching for Bleeder, assuming this meant she was close, watching him. Bleeder taunts him, confirming that she is watching him, and the governor. Wax leaves, forcing Bleeder to trail him in order to stay close enough to talk in his head. Wax notices movement in a window, and Bleeder compliments his detective skills, to which Wax plays down, saying how in the roughs, he didn't have to do much detective work. Bleeder disagrees, revealing that she knows a great deal about his time in the roughs. Wax approaches the building and looks up at Bleeder in the window. Her face is shrouded in shadow, but it seemed oddly shaped to Wax. Bleeder, in a raspy voice, asks Wax if he had asked Harmony why he didn't save Lessie, intervene in some way. Angry, Wax reaches for his gun and syringes, but Bleeder continues to try and turn Wax against Harmony, questioning what kind of a god he is to do nothing, and insinuates to Wax that perhaps Harmony wanted Lessie to die, in order to force Wax back to Ellendale. Wax, angered, fires a shot at Bleeder, cracking in the night. Bleeder apologizes to Wax for what she has to do, and a blur of mist passes by Wax. Bleeder moving with ferrochemical speed toward the governor. Wax gives chase and finds Bleeder has killed a couple of guards. He sees her fully then in a body-length red cloak, a twisted version of the marksman's mask covering her face. Wax continues his pursuit and manages to score a couple of hits on Bleeder, but is forced to take cover when Innate's special security sends a barrage of gunfire at Bleeder. Bleeder easily manages to dispatch them and makes her way down into the safe room, one of the bodies stir, revealing a disguised Wayne, who throws up a speed bubble, allowing Wax to see Bleeder at her enhanced speed unlock the door with a key she shouldn't have. Bleeder, surprised that Wax was moving at her speed, is taken off guard when Wax fires everything he has at her. Many of the bullets, despite having to exit the speed bubble, find their mark, stunning Bleeder. Wax, taking advantage of the moment, attempts to push one of the syringes at her. Sadly, it also has to exit the speed bubble, causing it to miss her by mere inches. Recovering, Bleeder escapes into the safe room, and Wax hears a single gunshot from within. Wax enters the safe room, but Bleeder has already fled down an escape tunnel, leaving her bloodied cloak discarded within. The governor, alive, is tending to Drim's gunshot wound, puncturing his neck to no avail. Innate claims that the man had saved his life by leaping in front of the bullet meant for him. Wax is skeptical, but the governor is able to recite the passphrase he had given Wax earlier. Wax tells Innate he needs to leave the city, but the governor refuses, saying he wants to stay and try to save it. Wax recovers the syringe and drains it into Drim's corpse, just in case. Nothing happens. Upon further inspection of the tunnel, Wax finds a message scrawled in blood. I rip out his tongue to stop the lies. I stab out his eyes to hide from his gaze. You will be free. Chapter 17. A half hour after Bleeder's attack, while the governor is in an important meeting with city officials, Wayne sees Wax send a parcel to Renette via a messenger. Wayne is disappointed Wax didn't send him, to which Wax attempts to remind Wayne that Renette doesn't actually like him. Wax announces that Milan, who had arrived with Mercy a short time ago, will assist Wayne in protecting the governor, while he pursues Bleeder. Milan, having consumed one of the governor's recently deceased guards, exits the bathroom wearing their form and flirts with Wayne. Wax shows Milan the mysterious glowing substance, and she is able to reveal that it is Perchwither, a type of fungus that only grows in the Kandra homeland. Milan is taken aback at Palm visiting the ancient sanctuary, and communes with Harmony, who gives Wax permission to investigate. A footman appears announcing Wax's carriage has arrived. Wax explains to them that the carriage belongs to Edwarn Ladrian, who he hoped could shed some light on Bleeder's plan and any potential set involvement. Wax had set up this meeting via messages exchanged at one of the drop points noted in Edwarn's pocketbook that Wax had swiped. Inside the carriage, Wax exchanges pleasantries with his uncle. His uncle compares what is happening to the city to the pre-Cassandra days when Kelsier and his crew had overthrown the final empire. Edwarn taunts Wax by saying how Wax likely would have sided with the Lord Ruler and upheld the law. Wax, losing patience, demands his uncle tell him what he knows of Bleeder. Edwarn lectures Wax, explaining that his actions against the set have angered the other members and weakened his uncle's position within it, which Edwarn explains is bad because he is more conservative than the other members who clamor for change at any cost. Wax realizes that the set is working with Bleeder. Edwarn corrects him, saying it's more like they're riding the storm. Letting her finish her plan for a city in ashes makes for fertile ground. Wax curses his uncle, who reminds Wax that killing him will also result in the death of his kidnapped sister, Telsin. So Wax leaves, promising to deal with his uncle after Bleeder. Chapter 18. Mercy, despite getting out of politics, now found herself surrounded by a great many of politicians in Governor Innate's private study, discussing the crisis in the city. Before the meeting had begun, Mercy had Milan show Innate her true nature, and now he took credit in there being a rogue Kandra trying to kill him. The governor dismisses everyone aside from Mercy. He then reaches down and removes his seal of office from a hidden safe and begins writing, informing Mercy to tell Aradel that he has his writ of martial law, as well as promoting him to High Constable until the crisis is over. Innate announces to her that he plans to address the mobs when they arrive to give them a grand speech. Innate leaves and Mercy does likewise, intending to deliver the message to Aradel. While waiting for a carriage, she goes down into the empty safe room. Mercy begins drawing parallels with her city on the brink of a revolution to the night Luthadel was overthrown, assuming that Bleeder was mirroring events on purpose. And now with Innate giving a speech similar to Ellen Venture, who had become emperor after giving his heartfelt speech on that night long ago, she then notices some worn scuff marks on the middle volumes of a random collection of books. Finding it odd, she inspects further and realizes Innate was not reading through Breeze's old essays, but instead had hidden a key inside one of the volumes. She takes the key and uses it to open up a hidden safe, finding letters within proving the governor corrupt, trading political favors. Mercy realizes that by exposing these letters, she may be playing into Bleeder's hands, and so Mercy decides to take the letters directly to Aradel. Wax, having left his uncle's carriage, soars through the city, needing a place to think before heading to the Kandra homeland. So Wax, atop Eastbridge, dwells on whether Harmony could have saved Lessie, doubting him, just as Bleeder wanted. Chapter 19. Governor Innate enters his study and tells his bodyguards, who include the disguised Wayne and Milan, to wait outside as he prepares his speech. The two banter outside about accents and immortality. Milan reveals that after the Cassandra, in fear of ever being controlled again, as Ruin had done to them, the Kandra had come up with a way to end their own lives. Wayne approves of this escape plan and thinks of how eventually Bleeder would slip up, use the wrong word, and Wayne would notice. Wayne hears Renette outside dropping something off at the mansion and takes off. He steers Renette away from the butler, and she gives Wayne a pouch containing a bullet Wax had asked her to make. Wayne attempts and fails at seducing Renette, who already has a girlfriend, Misra. Wayne, expecting to get shot at or hit, is surprised that instead Renette warns Wayne that the city is getting dangerous, with fires being started and the people rallying against the governor. Captain Aradel receives the writ from Mercy and reluctantly accepts the title as High Constable. Mercy informs Aradel of the two things the governor requested of him: quell the riots using force if necessary, and to bring a small force to protect the governor while he gives his speech outside his mansion. Mercy informs Aradel of the governor's corruption on the way to the mansion on horseback. Aradel tells Mercy that this puts him in a difficult position, with the letters being obtained only semi-legally, and the people rioting for valid reasons. Aradel assures Mercy that he will not ignore his duty, but doesn't give an answer on how he will proceed either. Wax walks through the Field of Rebirth, Mayor Will Flowers brushing his mistcloak on his way to the Kandra homeland, a tomb for Elendon Vin. Wax makes his way past the guards posted to prevent looters, past various relics, and lies to the caretaker claiming that he is doing a routine inspection. Wax then drops down into the interconnected chambers of the old storage caverns and follows the blue lines of his steel sense to push on the secret lever in the ATM chamber, opening a door, where a growling voice greets him in the darkness. Chapter 20. Wax, surprised, fires 3 shots in order to brighten the room. A bestial form emerges, and Wax, realizing he is a Kandra, agrees to lock the door behind him and follow the massive wolfhound. Wax recognizes the creature as the guardian from the words of founding, Tensoon. Tensoon explains to Wax that he came to meet with him as the other Kandra are busy counteracting Palm. Wax asks him to explain, and Tensoon says that Palm is trying to spark a revolution using skills she learned from the Lord Ruler. The other Kandra, disguised, will be among the people, preaching peace and pleading them not to listen to rumors. Tensoon leads Wax through the network of caverns, and Wax is surprised to find himself within the remnants of Kredik Shaw. Tensoon hurries him along, wishing to show him something. Eventually, they reach a small chamber filled with pits, the old prison for the Kandra, the very one Tensoon had been trapped in before. One of the pits is full of hundreds of sheets of paper. Wax picks through the pages, all ripped from the words of founding, and each is scrawled with words written in blood dismissing the content of the pages, saying how they're full of lies. Wax asks after Vin, to which Tensoon has very fond memories of that he clings to. Wax and Tensoon assume the pages can be put together to spell out a phrase, but Wax feels off about it based on how Palm has acted so far, everything done deliberately. Tensoon is surprised to hear that Palm spoke to Wax as herself, not as an imitation. Tensoon tells Wax that Palm ignored the change of the world and distanced herself from the other Kandra, but still served Harmony. Wax realizes that this was all about Harmony. Palm was trying to bring down God himself, having been a personal puppet for both the Lord Ruler and then controlled right after by Harmony. She freed herself from him when she removed one of her spikes and let the insanity have her. Wax has Tensoon ask Harmony why Bleeder removed her spike, and Harmony tells Tensoon that while not taking control of her directly, he had pushed her very hard into doing something she didn't want to do. Wax wonders if Palm could have been Bloody Tan way back when he had shot Lessie. Wax realizes what Palm is doing. She views everyone as Harmony's puppets, the politicians his mouth, the religion his eyes. Tensoon agrees. In a way, Palm may still be following the first contract with the Lord Ruler, by bringing down the force he had worked to defeat, Ruin, and Harmony is half of that. Wax tries to determine what she will do next and realizes that the papers are a misdirection to keep Wax out of the picture for the next part, which Wax assumes is to bring down the Kandra, Harmony's ears, knowing that Tensoon would send them all out. Wayne, disguising himself as one of them, works his way among the front of the rioters. One of Harmony's Kandra, disguised as a priest, attempts to quell the rioters. The Kandra's words begin to get through to the crowd, and then Wayne notices a man sneaking up behind the Kandra to plunge a needle into him, disintegrating the priest, exposing him as one of the faceless immortals to the crowd. Wayne the Conner is then spotted as an imposter as well, and the whole crowd turns to look at him. Chapter 21. Tensoon curses as Wax and him make their way out of the caverns. Wax knows that Bleeder is now attempting to deafen Harmony by dealing with his pet Kandra, and is attempting to liberate the people by throwing everything into chaos. She believes that she can break them from Harmony's control through strong emotions. Tensoon tells Harmony to call the Kandra off, but it may be too late. Tensoon and Wax are interrupted by howling in the distance, unsure what form of creature could make that sound. The two continue to run, now pursued, and are eventually forced to face their pursuers. The creatures are some new, twisted form of hemorrhagic experimentation by Palm. Tensoon, having led them to his collection of stored bones, transforms nearly instantly into a unique, muscular form most closely resembling a koloss. The two prepare for a fight with Tensoon in his new form, and Wax guns at the ready. Tensoon, seeing that these creatures would be hard to kill with modern weapons, tries to get Wax to flee. Wax refuses to, and with some well-placed shots and fancy allomantic work, is able to hold his own. When the battle is over, Tensoon announces that later he must ask Harmony if by killing these creatures he had failed him. For the Kandra are Harmony's preservation, while Wax is his ruin. Tensoon removes one spike from a creature's corpse, and Wax notices that there is a red tint to it. Tensoon announces that this is a level of hemorrhagy beyond his level of understanding. They hear more creatures in the distance, and the two decide to flee, with Tensoon transforming back into the Wolfhound. Wayne manages to escape the rioters and make his way back to the governor's mansion, realizing that he is out of bend alloy. Standing outside the mansion, Wayne hears a voice drifting toward him, and instantly notices the accent is slightly off. And in that moment, Wayne knows who Bleeder is impersonating. Tensoon leads Wax to a newly formed cracked opening in the cavern, and with Wax's help they are able to open it and climb up. Wax realizes that they are climbing what used to be the pits of Hath-Sin. Their climb to safety ends in one of Elendil's sewers. Tensoon knows why Palm would want him out of the way, but notes that those creatures were designed to keep Wax busy. Wax assumed that it's so she can kill the governor in front of an audience without his interference. Part 3, Chapter 22. Wax drops through the mists, landing on the steps of the governor's mansion, and takes in the sight. The constables, led by Ardell, had created a barrier between the people and the mansion in preparation of Innate's speech. Wax barges into the mansion and is intercepted by Mercy, and the two exchange passcodes. Mercy asks after Wayne, who has seemingly disappeared, and fills Wax in on the governor's corruption. Wax dismisses this for now and tells Mercy to go check in on Steris, saying he will do the same to Lord Harms after speaking to the governor. Mercy leaves to search for Wayne first, and Wax forces his way through the governor's locked door, surprising Innate. The two exchange passphrases, and Wax chastises Innate for locking all his guards outside the room. Innate continues going over his speech as Wax listens to him. Realization dawns on Wax as soon as he steps in Wayne's discarded piece of gum, the stuff he had been incessantly chewing on, and it all begins to fall into place. Bleeder has been leading them around one step ahead this whole time. This plan of hers was meticulous, conceived way in advance, leading Wax to the conclusion that the best person for Bleeder to be impersonating was the governor himself. And so Wax spins around, leveling his gun at Innate, who had withdrawn his own sidearm, pointing it at Wax. The governor, now revealed to be Palm, curses Wax for seeing too far ahead. Wax begins reciting the events to Palm, revealing that she had known the passphrase, for he had given it to her after the impersonation had started. She had killed Drim to cover up that Wax had shot and bloodied her, giving her an excuse to remove her tattered shirt to staunch Drim's bleeding, while ditching Bleeder's cloak in the passageway, making it look like she had run off. Wax could see the gun pointed at him was of course aluminum, but he could also see that she didn't want to kill him. So Wax, taking advantage of this, yells for help. As he expected, Bleeder does not shoot him as the door swings open, so Wax fires a few shots to distract her as he reaches for his last needle. The guards who flood into the room of course shoot at him instead of Bleeder, who takes this as an opportunity to easily mow them down. Bleeder, annoyed, tells Wax she must kill him now to keep up her ruse, but continues to hesitate. So Wax shouts for Milan, who had been faking being a corpse. In response, she grabs at Bleeder as Wax leaps at her with the syringe. Bleeder, using her speedrunner ability, easily outmaneuvers them and is able to disarm and grab the needle, stabbing it into Milan. But her metal mind depletes as soon as she does so, causing her to falter. Wax uses this as a moment to shoot at her as Milan's shape droops and goes transparent from the needle's effects. Bleeder, healing from her wounds and hearing footsteps, flees out the window. Wax, unable to pursue, checks on Milan, who says that she will be alright in a few minutes. Wax then finds Wayne tied up, stabbed in the leg, stripped of his metal minds, and gagged in the closet. Wayne informs Wax on what he already knows, of Palm being the governor. Wayne explains to him that he had wanted to verify his suspicion after hearing the slip-up in the governor's accent and got too close. Luckily, Bleeder kept him alive. Wax assumes so Bleeder could harvest his metal mind abilities with spikes. They hear gunfire outside, so Wayne gives Wax the pouch from Renette, and Wax removes the bullet, leaving to pursue Bleeder. Chapter 23. Wax soars through the night like a bullet searching for Bleeder and notices a group of people pulling away from the mansion instead of toward it, most likely caused by Bleeder using gunfire to clear the crowd. Wax pushes himself forward and loads the bullet Renette had sent into Vindication as he enters the garden shed. In the shed, Wax finds the remains of the governor's bones. Bleeder had stored a body in the shed and just body swapped into it. Wax can hear Bleeder's voice in the darkness, claiming she can still free him and that she had originally come for him anyway. Wax, confused at her words, searches for Bleeder, hoping her to still be mid-transformation, asking why him. She claims that Wax is Harmony's hands, and so he can still act through Wax. Wax argues that he is still his own man, and Palm corrects him, saying how Harmony had orchestrated all of it, leading him out to the roughs and then roping him back to the city once he was hardened. Bleeder flees the shed using a coinshot's ability, having fully transformed now. Wax pursues her. Wayne makes his way into the shed with Mercy and Milan inspecting the bones. They notice the crowd outside impatiently awaiting the governor's speech. An idea forms and Mercy asks Milan how long it would take to impersonate the governor, nudging at his discarded bones. Milan agrees to, and as she's changing, Mercy begins writing a speech that will placate the crowd. Chapter 24. Bleeder was capable at steel pushing, but steel was his domain. Easily able to keep up with her, Wax could tell Bleeder had not been the marksman as she leads him toward the outer city. Wax quickly overtakes her and the two land facing one another on East Bridge. Bleeder refuses to be taken in and flies to the top of the bridge with Wax following. Bleeder removes the marksman's mask and Wax can see her wearing Leslie's face. Milan approaches the stage, preparing to give the speech while impersonating Innate, and the crowd goes quiet, waiting. Mercy realizes that she and the crowd were being soothed. Mercy speculates that the soothers are Suit's men wanting Bleeder's plan to come to fruition, and that when Milan goes off script, the crowd will be rioted. Mercy grabs Reddy and warns him of what's going on. She is able to awaken him from the soothing by pointing out that he normally is angry with her. Reddy, realizing she is right, agrees to put together a squad, and Mercy spots a conspicuous carriage, the source of the allomancy. Chapter 25. Wax is taken aback by her appearance and is astonished at how well Palm embodies Lessie, having her mannerisms down perfectly. Wax calls her a monster for digging up Lessie's corpse. Bleeder apologizes but points out that strong emotions free them from harmony. Wax, with his gun pointed at the monster wearing the face of the woman he loved, could tell she did not fear it. Why would she? Wax yearned for the opportunity to apologize to Lessie, and realizes that he can't shoot her, not again. Bleeder had outthought him after all. Bleeder admits to him that she had been Lessie, or at least wanted to be, instead being Palm the Chondra. Wax does not believe her, assuming her insane. Mercy, Reddy, and their small force flank the suspicious carriage, all wearing their aluminum-lined hats. They plan to attack quickly and quietly, but a group of men block their way to the carriage. Neither side wants gunfire to detract from the speech, so the two forces crash into one another in a melee. Bleeder steps toward Wax, claiming how perhaps she could have come to Wax right away, and compliments him on having removed his earring. Wax pleads with her to stop, and Bleeder says her life would have been easier if she could have stopped loving him. Wax, angered, seizes her by the neck. She admits that she chose not to come to him right away because she knew it would hurt him, but now without any choice she will have to do something about him to keep him safe but out of the way so that she can do what must be done. Palm says how she didn't know what to do about Wayne, admitting she didn't have the heart to kill him, for she loves him for having followed Wax back to the city, but she knows that Wayne is Harmony's and says that maybe he is better off dead. Wax shoves her away, attempting to level Vindication at her, but she pushes the gun away. The two tumble into one another, falling through the mists. She manages to shoot him in the leg, and he attempts to slow his fall, but upon impact shatters one of his legs. Wax frantically looks for Vindication and notices that the city is on fire, with nothing but darkness and peace outside of it. Mercy edges along the outside of the brawl, and in the background can hear Milan's speech, which was good, but Mercy could tell it felt falsified. She begins to hear the crowd start to anger as she continues creeping toward the carriage, with everyone ignoring her, a feeling she is all too familiar with. Mercy sees the carriage is protected by two guards, and so she lies on the ground trying to mimic a corpse while using her allomantic bubbles to speed up the fight outside them, taking the two guards in and out of the speed jumps with her. The two guards, spooked by the sight, head toward the crowd, warning them of Mistborn. Mercy gets to her feet and slips inside, leveling a handgun at the two emotional allomancers. Mercy threatens them, commanding they stop the men fighting outside, and then begins to think on what to do about the crowd. Bleeder pleads with him to stop obeying Harmony as Wax finally sees Vindication and leaps for it. Palm doesn't shoot at him, instead pleading he just listen to her. Wax levels Vindication at her, seeing Lessie once more, and tells her she was wrong about him. Lessie, now crying, asks how she was wrong, and Wax says how he isn't Harmony's hands, but his sword, and fires Vindication. Bleeder doesn't dodge, why would she? The bullet takes her in the forehead, lodging itself in her skull, serving as a second hemorrhagic spike. For the bullet had been forged by Renette in part from Wax's hemorrhagic earring. With the second spike now inside Palm, Harmony begins to take control of Palm, who screams out, realizing what had happened. Chapter 26. Mercy tows the female soother as a hostage and demands she stop the crowd's riot. Milan was doing too good of a job at impersonating and sounded just like the governor, who wasn't great at putting people at ease. Mercy realizes the soothing isn't working and is just planning to take Wayne and Milan to head for safety when she sees Aradel take to the stage and level his gun at the fake governor. Mercy tells the soother to soothe with all she has and offers her immunity for her crimes as a bribe. Aradel's voice can be heard loud and clear as he announces that Innate is under arrest for his crimes against the city. He tells his constables to turn away from the people and face him. Aradel uses his position as High Constable to inform the crowd that the constables are with them, saying that he will not tolerate burning and looting, but does plan on arresting all the corrupt High Lords and requests that the people help him do so. Mercy realizes that channeling the mob's anger towards something else could actually work. Wax crosses the bridge, limping toward Bleeder, seeing tears streaming in her eyes. She hates that Harmony is in her head and cries out, refusing to go back under his control. Wax tries to quiet her, but Bleeder continues to refuse and focuses on forcing her body to suicide. Palm, spasming, was indeed dying, and Wax, feeling sympathy for her, picks her up in order to let her die in his arms. Lessie looks up at him and smiles, saying how he's as surprising as a dancing donkey, calling him Mr. Cravat, something the real Lessie had called him the day he had met her. Palm then admits that she thinks that she loved him even on that day, a lawman for hire. Wax, taken aback, demands who told her of that day. So in response, Palm tells Wax to ask Harmony why he had sent a Kandra to watch over Wax all those years ago. To ask Harmony if he knew that Kandra he had sent would come to love Wax. Palm goes on saying how Harmony moved them even then, and that she had refused Harmony's demands for Wax loved it out there in the roughs. And Palm could not bring Wax back to Ellendale to become Harmony's pawn. After hearing these words, Wax in horror realizes it really is her. Palm is Lessie. Lessie is Bleeder. Looking up at him, Lessie utters her last words, telling Wax to ask Harmony why, if he knows everything, he'd let Wax kill her. After that, she grew very still, and Wax wept, having killed his wife once more. An hour later, Tensoon in wolf form approaches, and Wax pleads to him, asking if he knew. Tensoon confirms he did and says that Palm was sent to Wax long ago because Harmony worried about him in the roughs, and so sent him a bodyguard, to which Palm agreed. Wax is furious that Tensoon didn't tell him, to which Tensoon says he was forbidden and Milan didn't know. Harmony foresaw disaster had Wax known who he really hunted. Wax, overwhelmed, cries out how he had killed her again. Epilogue. Wax sits alone in a room full of people. His house hadn't been a part of any of the corrupt dealings, so it was considered a political victory. The people around him talked and celebrated Ardell becoming governor despite having no noble blood, making them all feel very progressive. While Wax stared into the fire and spoke only when it was required of him. Steris gave excuses and kept people away, saying that they had delayed the wedding. Wayne, still injured, hobbles over to Wax, but even his antics can't shake Wax out of his feelings. Wayne tells him how Lessie would have wanted him to stop her, and that Wax did what he had to. Wayne, recognizing Sophie Tarksel, the inventor, tells her how he feels her father was robbed. The girl is ecstatic that someone else agrees and talks of the future being in electricity. So Wayne offers her some money, investing in her, to which she readily accepts. Wayne most likely wants to do some good because Sophie's situation reminds him of Alriandra's. Mercy, wearing her uniform, sits next to Wax, placing a spike on the table next to him. She informs him that it came from Palm, noting the dark red spots on it, saying how Milan wanted her to show it to him and that they were unable to identify the metal, so someone had to have given the spikes to Palm. Wax says he doesn't care, and Mercy tries to comfort him, saying how Lessie fell in love with him, of her own accord, not Harmony's. Wax continues blaming Harmony anyway, assuming that Harmony knew what would happen. Mercy departs, leaving an earring behind for Wax to communicate with Harmony. Wax ignores the earring, leaving it where it lay. Mercy stops by the precinct offices to pick up her copy of the Lord Mistborn's Hymnology book, and is surprised by lights on in the back of the chamber, with Ardell doing paperwork. Ardell says how he regrets becoming governor. He believes they will vote someone else in, but Mercy doubts this. When asked, Mercy recommends Reddy to replace Ardell's old position as Constable General. They are interrupted by Milan, still wearing Innate's body, asking how to make a noose out of a belt, saying how she hasn't figured out how to hang herself properly. The two of them are taken aback at the proclamation, saying how she is still expected to sit trial and help put the right people behind bars. Milan explains that Harmony won't let her sit at trial pretending to be someone else. The whole idea would make a mockery of justice. Mercy agrees regretfully. Ardell fixes the belt and explains to Milan how to hang herself, and announces he will cut her down in 15 minutes. All she has to do is fool the coroner. Mercy leaves with Milan and asks how she was even able to get out of her cell, to which Milan tells of the advantages of being a Kandra and how she had manipulated her finger and picked the lock with it. Mercy suggests just asking Harmony if the nobles in custody are guilty, trusting in the word of God. But Milan criticizes this reasoning, saying that if Harmony guided them, then it would be just as Palm accused him of already doing. Mercy then criticizes Harmony for setting Wax on the path to kill Leslie again. But Milan defends Harmony, saying how he is doing the best he can and put the pain where he knew it could be borne. Mercy submits and shows Milan the medal, ensuring that Harmony really doesn't know the medal either and that it's not from his form, not harmonium. Milan insists that it isn't and speculates that the medal allowed Bleeder to steal and use abilities when other Kandra can't, also assuming the medal was the reason behind Harmony not being able to track or see her. Milan hints at Mercy, who eventually guesses that it must be the medal of another god. Milan agrees, saying how it terrifies them. Milan then excuses herself in order to hang herself properly this time. Mercy then recalls the name of Trell, proclaimed by Miles Hundredlives at his execution. Mercy believes the mysterious medal must be Trellium. Wax realizes he is alone in front of the same fire and has been sitting there forever. Steris had been there, is there now, but she doesn't say anything, just sits next to him and rests her hand on top of his. But that hand is warm, and finally, he rests his head on her shoulder and weeps.
An ocean filled up with emotion, anger ain't a potion, rub it on like lotion, I can feel it so deep, and the scars have awoken, I can't move on till I let go, I feel so lost, never at home, need to be strong, every breath hope, cause I can't move on till I let go, I can't move on till I let go, I feel so lost.